tonight and spend a few moments with us. I think it's really important. I think Greg's got a couple pretty good topics that we're going to touch base on tonight, and just I know everyone's going through a lot of junk right now, and every time you flip the news on, it gets scarier and scarier all the time. And I think the biggest thing is most everybody has to understand is that everybody is in this together, and I think the more that we can work together, and most definitely the more we can be productive and proactive and positive. Man, that's the biggest thing is being positive. The better we're all going to be, Greg. And so tonight, I think we'll touch base on some of those things. And man, I'm encouraging everybody if they got any questions tonight too, whether it's about summer hoops, about getting better, about you name it, whatever it might be, throw them our way, and we'll most definitely we will do our best to answer whatever we got. So. Greg, a couple topics tonight we can throw out and start talking about, and then kind of go from there, bud.
Yeah, actually, you kind of hit the word positivity on the head. It's kind of what I wanted to start with. Everything going on, kids can't get in the gym, can't get in the weight room. They're confined to their homes, and you're seeing these kids saying that they want to go back to school. They want to get back in the gym. They're itching just to have life back to normal. So what are some of your tips and tricks on and how to remain positive during this time? Because, negativity can drive us all insane very quickly.
Well, especially when we're all doing things that we're not necessarily used to doing. We're a very much mobile society. So a lot of you young guys, man, when I was your age, we weren't cruising all over the place. I lived in Cologne, and Winter was 10 miles down the road, and Gregory was 15 miles down the road, and it seemed like that was 3 hours away because we didn't go anywhere. And you guys, man, you could be living in the middle of South Dakota, and you can go to Sioux Falls and back in the afternoon and be back home. So it's a change for a lot of people. What I would say is this. We oftentimes think so much about the things that we're not able to do or what we don't have, and we don't focus on what we can do and what we do have. And the one thing that everyone has right now, man, is we got time. We got time and we got resources. And so I think if you're someone that sits around and literally is like focusing on, man, I can't do this, and man, I can't go here, and I can't do that, that's going to beat you up mentally like no other. I mean, it really is. But here's what I would say. Most everybody that's on here, either whether you're a parent, your kid's got a ball, or if you're an athlete, you got a ball. And I know most of you guys all got basements, and I know most of you all got garages. And next week it's supposed to be 60, 63, 64, 65. And you can have your rear end outside. And I'm a guy that, I've even as cold as it's been, I've found a way to get outside and run 3.5 miles every day. And you got through it. And so if you really want it, you'll find a way to do it. You need to be very structured with your approach. Right now is a perfect time. And we mentioned this last time. It's a perfect time to be focused on starting to create your plan to get better. So now you should be listing weaknesses. You should be putting a plan together for the off season. These are my goals. These are the things I want to accomplish. And then every day right now, you should be working on things that you can still work on to get better. You can all be working on ball handling. You can all be working on footwork. Every one of you guys can be doing body strength exercises right now. I don't care where you're at. You can be doing 100 push-ups a day. And so there's a lot of things you can be doing to improve yourself rather than just focusing on the things you don't have. And then, the beautiful thing about today is we got social media. We got ways to stay connected. There's a lot of times right now you guys can be FaceTiming and going live and stuff with each other while you're doing workouts together. And so put a little challenge out there, guys, man. Like do a 5-minute continuous ball handle and then challenge your buddy to be doing the same thing. But you could get creative with these things on all ways to get better. And the biggest thing is, and I would say this to young people and older people alike, Greg, we all have to be willing to talk and communicate. I got friends right now that are 50, 40, 30 years old, you name it, that are scared as hell. They're worried. And I can understand that. And I'm talking to athletes on a daily basis right now that are reaching out that are worried about, well, what happens if I get sick, or what happens if we don't get to have the state tournament in 2 weeks? Or what happens if they don't do this and don't do that? And it tells me that people need others to talk to. And so if you're a young person, if you're an adult, and you start to feel down or you start to feel not in a good way, you need to reach out to somebody and be open and honest and talk about those feelings that you have. And I'll be the first one to sit here right now and tell you, I'll talk to anybody at any time, and I'm willing to help in any way I possibly can with anybody. But find somebody you can talk to, Greg. That's really important when it comes to if you're not feeling well. But man, be positive. It's a choice. It's a choice.
You said we could be working on strengthening, ball handling, passing, everything like that. A core, push-ups, everything like that. How could we, or how could our athletes at home strengthen their minds more so? Basketball IQ, something that I've been trying to do a whole lot more is watching more game tape, doing a lot more reading of books, which is a very hard. It almost seems like it's another another challenge for athletes is to find a book, sit down and read it. Even if it's not reading, there's audio books, you can listen to it. And so I've actually been doing both, where I've been sitting down and been reading. But if I'm kind of just hanging out, I'll actually be listening to an audiobook at the same time. Those sorts of things. So what are some ways that we can be getting smarter as well as better physically while we're stuck at our homes?
Well, so many things that we do as athletes and as people, we focus on the physical end of things. And to be honest with you, it's an important part of everything you do, but the mental part of it, of whether it's athletics or life, is the lifeblood of everything you do if you want to be successful. So the best, whether it be at basketball or in business or whatever, are truly the ones who have the mental part of the game figured out. And so right now is a great time for you to study from the best. A lot of times, we did a podcast. It's probably been about a couple months ago, Greg, on the importance of on how to watch film, because a lot of people when they watch film, they just want to watch themselves, or they want to see the person who has the ball, and they want to see the cool things, but they're not really willing to sit down and analyze. And so, for example, I'll just use this for example. I would challenge all of our athletes to sit down, and if you played at the high school level, you got a huddle. I would challenge you to sit down and watch one game that you played this winter, and only watch what you're doing when you're away from the basketball. Watch yourself on offense when you don't have the ball in your hands. Tell me what you're doing. When you cut, do you cut with a purpose? When your job is to set a screen, are you getting big, wide, and actually creating contact? When your job is to come off a screen, how are you setting up the defender, and how hard are you coming off of those things? What's your body position like when you're away from the basketball? Are you standing straight up and down, or are your legs engaged? How you're communicating on offense, and then flip it on the backside on defense. It's easy when you're watching film to watch how you guard the ball, but what's your stance like away from the basketball? Where are you at on help side? What's your rotation like? What are you doing every single time when you excuse me, my phone. This a couple times, Greg, my phone ringing during this thing. But what are you doing away from the basketball? And to me, if you really are serious about being better, man, it's not about how well you can handle it. Listen, we get to work with a lot of guys and get to see a lot of kids play. Everyone can dribble a ball. And whether you're a great ball handler or a good ball handler, there's not a lot of room in between those two things. And whether you're a good shooter or an average shooter, the differences between that is being a 42% three-point shooter and a 37% three-point shooter. So you know what? In all reality, you're not that far away. But the biggest difference between being good to great is how are you away from the ball? How well are you mentally, and how hard are you working? Like I would encourage athletes when they watch film to give themselves a grade. Grade yourself on effort. Like how hard are you working? When you're supposed to be sprinting the floor in transition, are you physically sprinting? When you're supposed to be getting back on defensive transition, are you sprinting to half court and turning and finding your man and communicating? I mean, all those things that make great players great, that's what they do. They don't even think about it. It's instinctive. But a lot of our kids who think they're really good aren't, because they don't do any of those little things correct. And so to me, this is a great time for kids to really evaluate themselves, because a lot of the things you can really improve on the quickest is all about how you control yourself with your attitude, your mentality, and your effort. And a lot of times I think, and I would even say myself as a coach, there's a lot of times I would sit back after a game and I would say, man, I coached a great game. And then when I would sit down and watch film, I'd be like, holy cow, man,
Mhm.
you should have adjusted here. You should have adjusted there. That was not a good timeout. We should have been, So if you really want to grow, you have to be willing to evaluate yourself and be honest with yourself. But it comes with studying film. And so I would encourage our athletes during this free time, study film, and while you're studying film, take notes. Take notes. And then upon those notes, starts to give you a plan on things you can work on to get better. But really study that film when the ball's not in your hands, because you play 90% of the game, 95% of the game is played without a basketball in your hands. So if you really want to be good at the 95%.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think you could probably agree to this, and maybe you can comment on it on what you would rather have from a coach's standpoint. Would you rather have that freak athlete who kind of just relies on his athleticism, or would you rather have that guy who maybe is not the quickest, maybe can't jump the highest, but is just so incredibly intelligent on the basketball floor that you never have to worry about him making a mistake, or even if he does make a mistake, you know that he's smart enough to correct it, and he's out there and he's basically your coach on the floor. What would you rather have on a basketball floor? Would you rather have that guy with the high IQ or the guy who can jump high?
If I want to win games, and I want to consistently win games, and I want to win games when it matters, I want kids who have a high basketball IQ.
Mm-hmm.
2-3 years ago, a couple years ago, when we had our national team that traveled the country and we played the best teams. We got sixth in the AAU national championships in Orlando. We won the Nike Invitational in Indianapolis. We went to the Final Four in Las Vegas. We were just a bunch of South Dakota kids that weren't super athletic, playing against some of the greatest athletes in the country. And same thing when we played the U.S. the U.S. national team. And those things are all testaments to the fact that when you do things right, when you're fundamentally sound and you have a high basketball IQ, you can negate athleticism through discipline, through hard work, and through execution. Those things will negate athleticism. Now, don't get me wrong. It's great to have great athletes because there's certain things that great athletes bring to the table that you cannot teach. But the one great negator of athleticism is discipline and execution. So in order to highly execute, especially on both ends of the floor, because a lot of times people, when they think of execution, they think of only the offensive end. But really, execution comes to both ends if you want to be a really good, solid team. It comes to having a basketball IQ. And so you can't have kids execute fully without having a true knowledge and understanding of how to play the game. And it goes right back to what we talked about, and that's studying film, analyzing how you're playing, and analyzing how you're playing without a basketball in your hands. So what are you doing away from the ball offensively, and what are you doing when you're not guarding the ball defensively? Those things are absolutely huge if you want to be the best player you can be.
Not even the best player, but even the best team. I mean, you got
Yes.
five guys on the floor who are all just got those high basketball IQs, and you're going to win a lot more games. So, I mean,
Yep, and kids have to understand that. A lot of times what happens is especially with younger teams who don't necessarily have that athleticism, is you'll have kids that try to do too much. And you'll hear coaches say this a lot. Guy, he's trying to do too much. Well, what a coach really means is when you're not fully capable of doing that, it takes you out of the scheme of execution. So offensively, I'll just use this for example. Offensively, if you've got a kid who's not a great downhill, get into a gap penetrator, and he's out over dribbling, you're not going to be able to execute offensively to the best of your ability if you've got a kid over dribbling the basketball. So when a coach says, man, you're trying to do too much, it's not that he's putting you down. What he's really saying is, as a team, we can't fully execute to our ultimate capabilities because you're doing things you're not quite capable of doing. And when you're doing those things, it's hurting the other four people on the floor. So teams that fully execute are teams that really have five guys on the floor who are all doing their job. More importantly, they're not trying to do too much. They're doing what they're capable of doing. They're doing what they're good at. And when that happens, everybody fits in just like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's beautiful to watch. It's great basketball when you see that. And those things will negate a team of a bunch of athletes who aren't. Now, if you get a group of athletes who are disciplined and execute, that's when you win championships.
Oh yeah, every single time. I mean, I suppose, you know, we talk about the film, watching that, and then, you know, how about the importance of like, you know, reading, you know, even if it's an article. One thing that my high school coach, Coach Knight, made me read was Toughness by Jay Billis. He didn't give me a choice. He said, you have to read this. No, and then you got to come back. You got to tell me about it. I read it, and I mean, I've probably read it 4 more times after that. Things like that. What could kids be reading or listening to that can get them better, and even coaches for that matter?
Yeah, I think the second you think you're already good enough is the second you're going to get your butt beat. And I see, unfortunately, and you guys, most everybody listening tonight knows me very well that I'm pretty upfront and honest. That's one of the deaths of most coaches. Is you get a lot of coaches out there that already think what I know is what I know, and I don't need to get any better because what I do works. Well, eventually your butt's going to get beat. You have to be willing to grow every day. So yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was last week, we put out a book list on our Facebook page, 10 books that we recommended for athletes to read. I should put one out for coaches next. But all 10 of those books that we put out on our reading list are all awesome. And all 10 of those books I would highly recommend any athlete to read. But here's it's different, and this is really important, and I think it's something we need to talk about when it comes to reading a book. It's not good enough just to read the book. Anybody can just read a book, okay? So I think it's important. So you take Toughness, for example, by Billis. It is one of the best books I've ever read. And I would agree with you. I've read it probably 3 times. But sometimes as a young person, and even us as adults, you need to discuss what you read. So I would highly encourage, when you get on that book list, for example, this is another great thing about the time we have, is get a buddy, get another teammate, get another player that you know, whether it's a summer hoop teammate or whether it's a teammate from your own school, or challenge your entire team. I used to have my kids at Chamberlain. We'd read a book, but we would talk about it. And so read the first chapter of Toughness, and then have a discussion as a group on it. What did that chapter mean to you? What did you get out of it? How do you analyze? What does toughness mean to you? What is toughness on the court? Sometimes, especially young people, toughness means someone can walk into a room and beat your butt. Well, that ain't tough, man. The best players I ever coached when it comes to toughness weren't the physically tough kids. It was the mentally tough kids. Mm-hmm. And when you read that book, it's 100% about mental toughness, because the best players and the best teams are mentally tough. The best players are the ones that want to be coached. And truly, I mean this. If you want to be coached, you've got to be mentally tough, because you've got to want a coach to tell you when you're not doing things right that, hey, you're not doing them right. And you got to be okay with that if you want to get better, because truly the only way to get better, to really get better, is to know the areas you're not good at and to be cognizant about those things so you can physically focus on them. And so mental toughness in life, what we're going through right now, we just talked about at the start, this whole live stream tonight was this pandemic we're going through, and you got to be mentally tough to get through something like this. So I would encourage people to take a look at that book list, choose a book, but then do it together. Do it with a group of friends, somebody else, but then chapter at a time, and sit down and discuss it, because you're going to get more meaning out of the book. It's going to soak in, it's going to sink in, and when you talk to somebody else, they might have a little bit different perspective on that than what you do. And that's how you learn to grow a little bit as a person, and you think outside the box a little bit. So I would highly encourage any of those 10 books. I'm glad you said that, though, because now what I need to do is I need to put out a list for coaches as well, because that first list we put out was strictly for player. I mean, Toughness is a great book for anybody. I don't care if you've been like athletics.
It doesn't even have to be a basketball player.
Coaches.
You can be a soccer player, read Toughness. I think all athletes, doesn't matter what your sport is, should read that book.
Heck, I don't even think athletes, man. I think if you're in the world of business, yeah. I think if you're in the world, man, it's a great book for anybody to personally think about just how to be better. So yeah, I'll put out a coach's list either tomorrow or Saturday, depending on the time I got. That's a great man. That's a great topic to bring up. Great.
So for the people that are listening, and I'll give my three first, and then you give your three. What are the three books that you recommend right now that people should either go out and order or even listen to via audiobook? So I'll give my three, then you give me yours, and then we'll go from there. So my three, number one is Toughness by Jay Billis, 100%. Number two, I don't know if you've read this book, Relentless by Tim Grover. Great mindset book, and it is no excuses. The definition of that book is you aren't gonna like what the guy talks about, but if you live it, you're gonna go up. And then the third one is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. So those are my three for athletes to read. They're so good, and it all relates into sports if you want it to. But those are my three. So I want to know yours.
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't say Leaders Eat Last because that was going to be my dark horse.
Yep.
And you know, there's a when you read Leaders Eat Last, the premise behind that whole statement is that in the military, that's kind of the mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as a leader, you make sure you take care of everybody else first, because if you do that, everybody else will take care of you. And sometimes in today's world, we're so caught up in taking care of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
that we forget that in order for you truly to be the best you can be, you've got to be surrounded by other people who have the same vision, goals, dreams, pursuits that you have. And you'll have to do it together if you're really going to accomplish great things. And so, to me, that book that's on one of the top of my list for coaches. I think coaches need to read it. I think it's really good for players to read, but yeah, dang it, that was going to be my dark horse right there. Those are my three books. I'm with you, Greg. I love Relentless. I think that it makes you think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book that some people, I'm gonna be honest with you, for some of you guys out there, if you read it, you're not going to necessarily like it right away, because it challenges you a little bit. I guess that might be the easiest way to say it. It challenges the way you think a little bit. But Relentless is phenomenal. But matter of fact, that you said that I just got done reading Leaders Eat Last for the second time today. I finished it up today. So it's a very, very good book. Very good book.
Oh, well,